Hi, I'm Beth, and today I'm going to show you how to make this generous size tote from the Northcott Call Me line. So grab your 18.5 inch by 27.5 inch piece of your bag front and your fusible fleece. And we're using Fusible Fleece 1 from the Warm Company. This has one side that has fusible on it, and it's the scratchy side. So you want that towards the wrong side of your fabric, and line those pieces up. And then we're going to fuse. We're using a high heat with steam. And you'll fuse from the front, and you just want to hold in position for a little while. Let that get nice and hot so that melts that fusible, and then move to your next spot. So you'll continue all the way across this piece. Next, we'll add the stabilizer to our lining rectangles. So grab your 18.5 by 27.5 inch lining rectangle and your fusible stabilizer, and we'll fuse that to the wrong side of our lining rectangle. Once you've fused the front and back of your bag and then the lining, both pieces, you'll cut a 4.5 inch square out of all the bottom corners on the long edge. Now we'll be making the handles. So we are using our fusible stabilizer again, and we are lining it up with one side of our handle piece. And note there's about a 1/2 inch here of excess. And then we will fuse this on. So we've pressed this 1/2 inch under, and then we have marked 1.5 inches from the top of our piece, and then we'll fold to that line. And then we'll press all the way along there. So we made marks all the way along the handle piece. Then once we do that, we'll fold it once more, and then we will have it folded in thirds. Once you have that pressed, you can fold the strap up and make sure both raw edges are inside. So when you fold it, you don't have any raw edges exposed. Because this is so thick, we're using Wonder Clips. It makes it a little easier to hold that together and also won't leave holes in your fabric. Next, we're going to stitch parallel lines all the way down our handle piece. And we are using a pink thread to go with the rest of the colors in our bag. For the next line of stitching, we can use the guide on our 1/4 inch foot to line up with our previous line of stitching. We finished stitching our handle and we cut it in half, so we have two 21 inch long handles. Now we found the center of our bag front and marked that with a pin, and then measured 3 inches on either side of the center and marked that with a pin, and that is going to be our handle location. So we've lined up the raw edges of the handle. Just make sure you're not twisting this handle at all when you put that on, and clipped it in place. And now we're going to baste along the raw edge just to hold that in place. So for a basting stitch, you want to lengthen your stitch a little bit. We've got a 4 millimeter on here. Since we're only going over this handle, we want to make sure we're catching that enough times to hold it in place. And we're using about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want to get too far into that seam allowance for when you're finishing your bag. And do that on both handles. Now do that on the bag back as well. Now that we have our handles basted, we'll take our lining piece and we're going to match those up right sides together. And make sure the handles are on the inside. And we'll clip or pin along the top edge. We're using the Wonder Clips again. And then we're going to sew just along this top edge. Don't forget to set your stitch length back to your normal stitch length from your basting stitch. And we'll sew 1/4 inch all the way down this top edge.
1/4
So we've sewn both of our fronts to our linings and press the seam open. So this is what it looks like. It's a rather large piece. So you're going to lay these out right sides together, lining touching the lining and the front touching the front, and then you'll want to alternate the handle so you don't have them both on one side. It gets a little bulky. Then we'll line everything up, and I've marked our opening for turning, and that's on the lining side, and that's 10 inches, so center that on the bottom. And then we're going to sew around the bag, but we're leaving open these corners. So we're going to sew here, along the sides, and then along the top on the other side. So we've added our extension table to help support our project, and this comes with the Janome 3160 QDC. We've also added our walking foot. This is a really great time to use it. It helps feed all the layers through evenly, and we're going through a lot of layers here, so that will really help us a lot. So we're stitching all the way down the side with a 1/4 inch seam. When you get to the end where you're going to be sewing right up to the opening, you'll want to add a back stitch or a stay stitch. So we've finished sewing, and now we're going to box the corners, and this gives the bag its shape. So what you do is grab the corners and kind of pull them towards each other, and then line up these seams. And then we're going to just finger press those open and then line up this whole part. Make sure that the seams in the center are meeting. That's critical. Once we've maneuvered that under the needle, then we'll sew across the raw edges here, and that will create our boxed corner. Then we'll do that to the remaining 3 corners. Now we've boxed all 4 corners, and we'll turn it right side out through the opening in the bottom. Now you can fold the opening in the lining under a 1/4 inch and hand or machine stitch that closed. The next step is to tuck the lining inside the bag. Get that all in there nice and neatly. You just kind of have to work it around a little bit. Just kind of roll it at the top a little if you need to get that lining down there a little bit more. Now we'll top stitch a 1/2 inch from the top of the bag. I like to start on the seams. When you get to the handles, just make sure that they are up and not tucked inside the bag. We've taken the extension table off the machine and used our free arm so that we have more room to maneuver the bag. We're almost done. So we've top stitched our bag, and now we're going to give a little more definition to the corners. So what we'll do is measure over from the center seam to our boxed corner, and then do that at the top, and that's where we're going to pinch and then line up the top with the bottom. So we're going to sew down a 1/2 inch down the side and back stitch at the top and bottom. Or you can use a stay stitch as well. As you get down to the bottom, stop about a 1/4 inch before you get to the bottom of the bag and backstitch there too. We've defined all 4 corners and now the bag is finished. It is a really great size and it's nice and sturdy. Perfect for packing full of all your crafting items and taking it on the go.